Welcome to the Fully Mindful, where we explore what it means to live with intention, creativity, authenticity, and connection. I'm your host, Melissa Chareau, mindfulness and breathwork facilitator, neurodivergent lawyer and coach, and fellow human navigating this wild and beautiful ride we call life. On this podcast, we dive deep with interviews featuring inspiring guests, share solo mini episodes packed with guided mindfulness practices to help you center and thrive, and mix things up with tangents and sidebars, where my friend and fellow podcaster Debbie Harrell from the New World Normal joins me for some real, random, and meaningful conversations. So if you're ready to pause, reflect, and expand, you're in the right place. Let's get fully mindful.
Going back to the tribal days, just if you didn't stay with your tribe, there was a good chance you were going to get eaten by a bear or a mountain lion, right? So you had to stay together. Modern time, if we're found out that we are less than perfect, that we are human, we might get rejected. We might get left behind. We might be separate and alone and die. So it's like survival. It's our survival instinct to put on the mask.
Hey, everybody. I'm happy to have today's guest be Kim Gross. She is the host of the popular podcast Mask Off and a champion for helping people find out exactly who they are behind the masks they wear. You know what I'm talking about. While Kim is an inspirational life coach and motivational speaker on a path of personal and spiritual growth, that was not always the case. You'll find out more about that on today's episode. For a long time, like so many of us, she believed she was not good enough. So she started creating masks to cover who she really was. These included performing, perfecting, and pleasing, you know the drill. And unfortunately, this turned quickly into what many of us have experienced: anxiety, depression, and even autoimmune disease. Fortunately, she began to study from wisdom teachers, both past and present, and from her experience, she not only healed herself, but also developed the 5-step power pathway, a process that helps others to feel more empowered, more freedom, more joy. So rest assured, friends, we dive deep into this 5-step process and discuss how it can remove the masks that we wear, help us overcome imposterism, perfectionism, and people-pleasing. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Can't wait to hear what y'all think, and welcome to Kim. Well, hello, everybody. This is Melissa with the Fully Mindful, and I'm excited to have here with me today Kim Gross. She is the founder and creator of the 5-step power pathway, which you'll find all about soon. She helps people pleasers and perfectionists who have spent a lifetime of perpetual suffering because they have identified with these patterns. Haven't we all? She helps guide clients on a journey of self-healing so that they can have more meaningful connections and have the courage to create the life that they deserve. She too is a covering codependent and knows all that pain all too well. And so she helps people to go from this perfectionism and people pleasing to something much more powerful and aligned with who they really are. She spent a lifetime pleasing and perfecting, and all the while losing herself in the roles that she played. Can't we identify with that? So it is her passion and her desire to help others to create real and meaningful relationships and create the inner power to dare greatly as they create the life they desire. She's also the host of the popular podcast Masks Off. We'll get more information about that later because you're going to want to listen to it. And she is a champion for helping people find out exactly who they are behind the masks they wear. She helps people awaken themselves by guiding them to undo patterns, stop living for others, and shift their mindset and start healing. Yay, that sounds like such wonderful work. Thank you so much, Kim, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me on. And I guess I should just maybe before we start, in case I ruin anything, am I allowed to swear on here? Because I do have like such a problem.
You're fine. As a former prosecutor, I am accustomed to the potty mouth, the trucker mouth, the cop mouth, whatever you want to say. And I think the
Okay.
listeners are too. So
I just think it's so much fun to swear. I just like when I say the words, they do make me feel more powerful.
swear away. And I should also tell the listeners that Kim and I met. It was really interesting. We were both interviewed on the Candid Shop podcast about imposterism and perfectionism. And it was a really cool podcast. She does an incredible job with interviewing multiple people at the same time. And it was really a lot of fun. And we connected there. And now I like to call her my new friend. So I'm excited to have you here.
I know. I love the way the universe works that way. It was just so synchronistic. I had never been on a podcast where I was with three other women. So that was really fun, very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting. I mean, usually a lot of podcasts are just this format, one person, speaking with another, or just one person speaking in a monologue fashion. So it was really different for me too. And it was fascinating. It was empowering. It was awesome. So
Well, it was freaking uncomfortable as hell for me in the beginning because I felt like such an imposter. I truly felt like when Kristen was asking the questions and I'm like, I don't know how to respond to these questions. And, you guys just sounded so like intelligent, intellectual, so much of an expert. And I'm like, who am I? But that is the languaging behind. That's the inner dialogue, that incessant barrage of negative inner dialogue for the perfectionist is who am I? Who am I? Right. And I sometimes so I have masks off is my podcast. And if I do change the name of it, which I don't know if I will or won't, but I would change it to, and I just came up with this yesterday, like, who the fuck are you?
I love
Who the
that.
fuck are you? So it would be, who the fuck are you? Take off your masks and find out, right? Because that's it. Because who we are truly, inherently, naturally is behind the masks. That's our true selves. That's our inherent divine self is behind the masks. So it's like, who are you? Yeah, I'm going to find out who I am. I'm going to take my masks off one layer at a time. And some of those babies are glued on.
Yeah, no, I get it. And the irony was not lost on me either that we were doing this podcast on imposterism and perfectionism, and you were courageous enough to call it out what you were feeling. And, the rest of us went, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. And I mean, that's the thing is that it's this shared human frailty, right? That we think that we somehow aren't good enough or smart enough or people are better, or if they only found out that, I didn't know what I was talking about, or I didn't have all the answers, or I'm not as smart as the next woman over there, then, I would be exiled or something. I'm not sure exactly what our biggest fear is, but I think it's that we somehow will no longer be a part of the tribe.
Yes, I was just going to say I think it is that. I think it is that, Brene Brown says all the time, we are wired for connection. We are wired for love and belonging. Going back to the tribal days, just if you didn't stay with your tribe, there was a good chance you were going to get eaten by a bear or a mountain lion, right? So you had to stay together. Modern time, if we're found out that we are less than perfect, that we are human, we might get rejected. We might get left behind. We might be separate and alone and die. So it's like survival. It's our survival instinct to put on the mask. And that's the underpinning of why we wear masks is to protect ourselves. They all come into play because of protection at some point, most likely in our childhood.
It's fascinating. I am reading Atlas of the Heart right now by Brene Brown.
Love it.
It's fantastic. And I've got the physical book, but I'm listening to the audible version because she reads it and she's so classic Brene in it because she'll just stop and say, well, this isn't in the book, but, and then tell a story. And one of the things that she was talking about yesterday in the section that I was on loneliness, which is, being exiled from the tribe. And I think it was something like, I hope I'm not getting this wrong, something like 45% more chance of a higher chance of premature death from loneliness, And that was higher than heart disease. It was higher than alcohol use disorder. It was higher than all of those things was loneliness. We have this deep human need for connection. And so, yeah, we put those masks on. The irony is we put those masks on, we disconnect so that we won't lose connection with the tribe.
What happens is when you're wearing a mask and you're trying to connect from that space, you're not connecting from an authentic space. So it's not that deep, meaningful connection that you really long for, which is to really be seen, to be heard, and to be understood for who you truly are, not for who you are with the mask on. But we get it backwards. We think that we have to put the mask on and look so uber competent, look like we have our shit together. Like I remember I couldn't even have people come over to my home a while back without going through and picking up and putting everything away. Like everything had to be just so. Yeah. And everything in my life was that way. I had always putting this internal pressure on myself to be doing it all, getting it all right done. Yesterday, like if I was learning something new, no learning curve to it, I had to get it perfectly right away. And then if I didn't, I was falling short somehow. So it's like we put this inauthentic self with the mask on out into the world and wondering why we feel so freaking lonely anyway. I can remember, and I don't know if you can relate. I could be in a room full of people, have so many people around me, and then yet feel so freaking lonely.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, and I think when we put those masks on and we glue them on tight, and we might not even know, some of us don't even know for the longest time that we've even done that.
I know.
And then we don't know why we feel so disconnected and apart from. And that's precisely why, because we have that deep need to connect with another. Well, I want to talk about, I mean, you talked a little bit about, what it used to be like for you. And we'll get a little bit more into that, but I'd love to hear like what your wake up call was, because I know you have experience with this. So what was the moment you're like, I can't do this anymore. I've got to rip off these masks. I've got to do something differently.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was a single moment. It was a lot of stuff that was going on in my life. When I was a teenager, well, I wouldn't even say just as a teenager, but I had a compulsive overeating disorder, right? An eating disorder, compulsive overeating, anxiety, depression, numbing in any way, shape, or form. And then when I was in my early 30s, after I had my second child, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And my kids were 0 and 3. No, actually, I think my daughter was 2, my son was 5 when I was diagnosed. And I knew that if I didn't do something drastically different, I wasn't going to be able to show up for them in the way that they needed me to show up. And I couldn't show up for myself. So it started like there that I started my journey. And it started with a self-care plan, because as a recovering people pleaser, it's so hard to take care of yourself. It was so hard to put myself first, because the people pleaser is always putting other people's wants, needs, and desires ahead of her own.
Yeah. What did you discover you were doing that for? Like, once you started on this journey, what did you uncover? Like, what were you getting from the people pleasing?
Let's take a quick break.
Hey, everybody, this is Melissa with the Fully Mindful. It's the new year, and I bet you're feeling the need to unlock your full potential and embrace empowerment, or maybe something completely different. Well, I'm excited to offer a new program with one-on-one breathwork and coaching sessions. We'll embark on a truly transformative journey of self-discovery, combining conscious, connected breathwork and embodiment coaching, and more. So contact me, Melissa, at the Fully Mindful, for your transformative session today.
So what I got from the people pleasing was I thought that I was staying connected. So my underlying fear was I didn't want to be rejected or abandoned because I didn't want the other to be upset with me. So it really started when I was a kid with my mom. If I wasn't doing exactly what she wanted me to do, if I wasn't thinking the way she wanted me to think, feeling the way she felt, or believe what she believed, she would get so angry and upset with me and say things like, how dare you talk like that? Or how dare you think like that? Or that's so wrong of you. And so I felt that there's that separation, right? Like, oh my goodness, now I'm being abandoned and rejected. And I hated the feeling of someone being mad or upset with me. I couldn't stand it if my peers were upset with me, anyone. So it was like, okay, I have to please. I have to perfect, perform, and please if I want to stay in good standing and make sure everyone around me is like calm and everyone around me is okay with me.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
I mean, it's a hell of a amount of pressure, especially on a child. And, I can see that. I mean, maybe I'm sure your mother had good intentions, perhaps, but it's when that person is in a position of, authority and admiration, and certainly relied on her for love and attention and food, sustenance. And then to have that messaging, it's so painful. And, of course, as human beings, we are so adaptable, right? And so we adapt. And, actually, I was just reading, there's a gal I'm going to be interviewing, Dr. Jenny King. She's fantastic. And let's see if I can pull this up or not in time. If not, that's okay. But she was talking about this in terms of being a trauma response, right? That perfectionism is the way that we're dealing with the trauma. And so, yeah, I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, totally. Because, and then I guess they call them like little T's or complex trauma. Like I did some studies under Dr. Gentry and even Dr. Gabor Mate will say that, any time that we split off from our true self in order to be attached, and we will do that all the time. We will rather be attached and cut off from ourselves and betray our true selves than to do the reverse. So that's what it is. It's like I abandon my true self. So when I was having my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own beliefs, and I was expressing them to my mom, and they were in conflict with hers, and she told me, how dare you say that? Or how could you possibly think that? What's wrong with you? I learned in those moments, okay, I'm going to betray myself right now. I'm going to abandon myself right now. And I'm going to go with what mom's saying. Because like you said, mom provides everything. She provides food on the table. She provides all those things that you just mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly what it is, right? It's this trauma response. So it's a survival response. So for anyone who's out there who identifies with this people pleasing and perfectionism, please know, like, there is no judgment. We've both been there. And it is literally like a survival response. It's us doing the best that we can with what we have in the time that we have it. And it's later when we do a lot of work that we find out like we don't have to actually live that way anymore. We can uncover our true selves and unmask and still be a part of the tribe. We don't have to, like you say, abandon ourselves in order to do that. Right.
Yes, I totally agree. And I would just add a caveat to that, which is that we have to, as adults, we have to learn how to source our own inner safety then, right? If we're going to stay true to our true authentic self, and now we may go in conflict or opposition to another that could potentially reject or abandon us in some way, shape, or form, we have to be able to source our own inner safety. We have to be able to go in. I had to learn. I'll just talk for myself. I had to learn, and I used my 5-step power pathway and my process to go inward and nurture my little girl, that vulnerable part of me that is so scared of being rejected. I had to go in. I have to go in repeatedly. It's a repeatable process because people, even though I've done so much shit ton work on myself, the patterns can and still do show up from time to time. The difference is when the pattern's there, it's like, oh, okay, there you are, people pleaser. There you are, perfectionist pattern, just like it did that day on Kristen's podcast. That was only a month ago. But it was like, okay, it started to come up within me. I felt it rising up. Oh my God, I'm feeling like an imposter. I see the perfectionism coming up inside me, but boom, I recognized it. And then I knew what to do. And I said to you guys that day that I went back into my body.
Mm-hmm.
I started to breathe and I started coming back into my body. And that's a tool. That's a tool to use to help source that safety so that I can show up more authentically, so that I can be vulnerable and speak up and say, wait, hold on. I feel like a freaking imposter. Like, I got to just tell you guys, all of you were so beautiful about it, but you could have looked at me like I had 10 heads, right? And said, yeah, why the hell did Kristen invite her on the show? She doesn't know shit. Like, it could have gone that way, right? And that's the fear
Right.
we have. That's the perceived fear.
But so rarely does it actually go that way.
I know.
Right. And if ever, I was saying when you were saying that, like, yeah, I guess theoretically it could have gone that way. My experience is that when I've stepped out and been vulnerable and it feels fucking terrifying, it has never backfired on me. And I'm not saying we go shout our truths from the rooftops. I mean, there are certain people that it probably wouldn't be safe to be around or with in our 100% authentic selves. But I would say for the most part, for most of humanity, it's actually perfectly safe. And most people connect with it because they identify with it, and it gives them permission to take off that mask, which is what you did on that podcast. You said what was happening with you. And, the other guest, who I feel terrible, I can't remember her name right now. She was lovely. And I both said, yeah. Kate, that's right. We both said, yeah, no, feel 100% the same way. I mean, and for the listeners, this podcast, when we were talking about imposterism and perfectionism, like, I'm laughing at myself now because I had my computer up, I had my facts and my statistics about imposterism and perfectionism. Like, that's where I go, right? Like, you might have gone with like the perfect house and the perfect like image. And I bought my perfectionism with certifications and degrees and statistics. And let me show you how much I know so that you can't really see how much I don't know. Right.
Thank you for calling that out, because that's exactly what I was afraid of. Like, that's exactly how you appeared. Like, you knew your shit. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have any stats. I don't have anything pulled up Kristen's asking about research. I'm like, research? I don't know. And you're rattling things off. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I love that you just called that out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, it's 100% the truth. And, I was as nervous as you or as Kate. And I can't speak for Kristen. She was the host. She was lovely. I don't know. But the more trainings I can do, then that covers up all the things that I don't want you to see.
Yeah. And that's just, that is a layer of the perfectionist for sure. And that perfectionist just puffs up. That's a way of saying you puff up, overinflate. And as you said, overinflate to protect yourself from looking like you don't know your shit. Like then, because if you don't, then you might get rejected and cut off. Not good enough. So maybe there was messaging for you that if you're not all shiny on the outside, then you're not worthy.
Right. Well, yeah, for me, I mean, growing up with ADHD and, it not being really very well understood or appreciated, and especially for girls, I mean, I learned how to hide behind a mask of, oh, no, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And I don't need any help. I can do all this on my own, because the alternative was you get to go be in a special class. You get to get called out of class to get extra help, and everyone will know that you need extra help. That there's something, quote unquote, special, which to me meant bad, right? Not special as in good, but special as in bad. And so I learned to mask that shit right off. And what it did do, and what it still can do when I fall into that, is it does exactly what you were talking about. It just cuts off that connection. And and it's interesting. I don't need to go into too much detail, but I'm a lawyer by trade, and that is definitely a field where we have to know our shit all of the time. And I remember I was thinking of one judge in particular when I was a newer lawyer, and I went in front of him. We were all terrified to go in front of this judge, because he would yell at you, if you didn't know what you were talking about. And so, or at least that's the persona that we saw. But the truth is, if you went in there and just said, Judge, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. That's an excellent question. I'm going to get the answer for you. He was always very appreciative. So even the most cantankerous people can sometimes really, I mean, not everyone, but they will still appreciate that level of honesty of the, I don't know, and I'll have to go find out.
And like you said, being different or special is, again, just another example of that whole tribe thing, being on the outside, on the outskirts of the tribe. You just don't want to be looked at as being different or separate. If we're going back to that whole connection piece, if you're being pulled out of class and now, oh my goodness, there goes Melissa, she's in the special classroom, she's different. That might isolate you and separate you from the main herd.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, it's interesting too. You talked about your eating disorder, the overeat. I think was it overeating?
Overeating. Yep.
And I did that as well as, I was a binge purge person in my early teenage years. And I know now that was kind of, again, an adaptation, right, to this feeling of lack of control. I couldn't be who I was, so I was going to do this. And that gave me some sort of semblance of control in a weird, obscure kind of a way.
Oh, 100%. And I think that anytime, so I have a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old, and you have a teenager, right, as well?
Yes.
So it's like anytime that we are looking at our kids and we're seeing any out of control behavior, like too much phone or too much drinking, too much pot smoking, all of those are just like warning signs. They're just band-aids covering up the pain, the deeper wound. And the deeper wound is I don't feel connected to my true self. I don't feel worthy enough to show up in the world as I truly am. So I'm gonna start to wear masks. And because it's so painful, I need to like numb that pain. So let me just fill in with as many ways as possible. And especially like for teenagers and young adults, it's developmentally where they're trying to figure out how and where they fit in the world.
Right.
So when they're not connected to their peeps, it's hard for them.
It is really hard. And it's funny, I looked down just now because I had Brene Brown's book open and it happened to be open on this perfect page. And she says, because we feel belonging only if we have the courage to share our most authentic selves with people, our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance.
True. Totally.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. That is so true. And I think that ties back into what I was saying about that inner safety, like sourcing that inner safety. Part of it is being able to come more and more into that self-acceptance, come more and more into your wholeness. And that's what I help people with in the 5-step power pathway, is how to heal those wounds from being a child so that the person can come more into wholeness.
Right. They get to that self-acceptance.
The self-acceptance part of like, and sovereign, and like back into your sovereignty of owning who you truly are. Like, yes. And then feel empowered, which is why I call it power pathway, is because when you're coming from wholeness and your cup is full and you're sourcing everything from within, you can't help but to be empowered. You can't help to be your sovereign self and then have more joy and more, inner peace, and just life just starts to flow differently when you come from that place.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love what you're saying there and want to dig into it a little bit more, because the quote that I read from Brene, that bar of self-acceptance is very low. You're talking about much more than that. You're talking about not just self-acceptance, but self-love, and beyond that, self-sovereignty, that empowerment that we feel by coming into ourselves and really feeling empowered to be who we are and to connect from that level is like a whole nother thing.
It totally is, but it's like, to me, it's the epitome. Like, it's the goal in life. Like, people are like, what's my meaning? What's my purpose? What am I supposed? And there are many meanings and purposes in life, but for me, like, that's the epitome of it. Because here's the other thing that I say all the time is that we came into this world knowing and being whole. We came into this world whole. WHOLE, right? It was then from there, like throughout the conditioning in our childhood and from society, that we started to have the HOLES, all the holes, like Swiss cheese. And then that's why we started to wear the masks, because all these holes were like, with my mom, how dare you, all that kind of shame, how dare you, and who am I, and comparing myself to my peers, like all those holes. Now I had to protect myself. But now it's like a journey of coming back into the WHOLE, wholeness, where we came in. So it's like a full circle.
Yeah, I love that. And, I like the analogy of the Swiss cheese, because yes, some of those holes are inflicted upon us, but some of them are self-inflicted.
Totally.
And sometimes I will look for ways. I don't know it in the moment, but I'll catch myself. I've done a lot of work and mindfulness work and somatic work. So I now will become aware, usually a lot sooner. Oh, I'm the one doing this. I'm the one who's self-perpetuating this, or I'm creating, or I'm self-inflicting this hole inside of myself, which also means I have the power to heal it.
Yes.
Right.
100%, 100%. And that's why the second step of Power Pathway is like it's owning your shit, which means what you just said. You have 100% responsibility to change it. You can change it. There is no one on the outside that can come in and do the work for you. There's no one on the outside that can make you feel better and can fill those holes, HOLES. Only you can. And it's a choice. It's a choice. You can choose to continue to be a victim and blame people, places, and things for your current state of affairs, or you can change the only thing you can change, which is yourself. So like, I love the serenity prayer. I've been in 12-step rooms for many, many years. And that prayer is freaking amazing. And it's the truth, because the only thing I have the power to change or control is me.
Yeah, we are our own knights in shining armor. Nobody else can be that. Nobody. And, it doesn't mean that we're doing it alone. I mean, we have supports, we have connections with other people. If we have a faith or believe in a higher power, we have all of those supports. We're not in it alone, but ultimately we are the ones who make the choice.
I agree. And going back to Brene Brown, I don't know if she does it in that book or another book, but she has a visual of like a bridge where you have the guardrails on the side, like one of those suspension bridges. And so she talks about it like from a parenting standpoint, that as parents, like we're just the handrails for the kids to hold on to, but they have to walk the bridge. Well, it's the same thing. Like you and I have to walk the path and choose to do the work. But I've had so many guardrails, so many handrails. I've been in 12-step meetings. I've had Brene Brown. I've had so many books and courses and therapists and healing modalities and coaches. Like coaches are amazing. And you're a coach. I'm a coach. Like we can help support and guide the process. So no, never are we to do it alone. It's not about, it's not about doing it alone. It's about doing it in community for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I think society will tell us we're alone, right? I mean, at least our particular Western society will tell us, oh, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and, you have to do this all alone. And all that does is perpetuate imposterism, perfectionism, and mask wearing, right?
Oh my gosh.
Right? Yeah.
It's so shaming. It's another way of shaming for sure.
Yeah. Like if you can't do it by yourself, there's something wrong or bad with you. And which is, of course, ridiculous and not true. So one of the things that you talk about in your work is going from, this prison, because it really is this prison, to paradise. And you talked about your first two steps, I think. What are, if you feel comfortable, talk a little bit more about 3 other steps so that we can get to some paradise here?
Totally. So I'm glad that you asked that question. So the first 2 steps, P is recognizing and being aware of patterns, and O is the ownership, as I already said. And a lot of that work is done like from the neck up in the mind, right? And then what happens is I go from the mind, take that elevator down into the heart and into the body, which is where W and E take place. So W is the willingness to feel, to heal. And then E is embracing your inner child and embracing the shadow part. So they go hand in hand. And this is where the crux of the work is done. This is where you have to go through the pain to get to the other side. There is no other freaking way. You can't go around it, can't go around. You can try to sidestep the pain any way you want, but I guarantee you'll still end up numbing out on food, wine, whatever, Netflix. You just can't go around the pain. You have to go through it. So, and during these steps, and this because you do somatic work, right? So I think it is Gabor Mate who says the body keeps the score, that we store the pain in our bodies. So one of the things that I teach and do with clients is posturing, which is really just getting in and like you have to feel the energy and release the energy that is, and you can probably speak more to this because you do somatic work, you teach that. And it's about really identifying first the feelings, feeling them, and then really feeling it in your body and releasing it. And I do this like every time a pattern comes up. It's a repeatable process that I do over and over and over again. And what happens is that every time I go in and I go in and I heal one of these layers of the onion, so to speak, it's like that piece of it just dissipates somewhere into the ethos. It's like it's gone. And it's because the other visual that I give often is I love using water visuals. So if you visualize like a marsh is very stagnant, very stale, and you have like layer upon layer upon layer of sedimentation. Well, that's what we do with our emotions, our repressed emotions and feelings in our body. We just push it down and it just gets all stuck in there. And it's like a freaking smelly, dirty ass marsh, right?
Yeah.
And the goal is to have this clear, free flowing stream of water / energy to get the energy clear and moving. So that's what I help do during the W&E phase of power.
I love that. And I do think it's important that people realize like, yeah, our bodies do store that pain, but they also store an incredible amount of wisdom. And sometimes our bodies have the answers well before it gets connected to our brains. I mean, obviously our brains are part of our bodies too, but we tend to live most of our lives up in our heads, and we forget to access the rest of our body, which has so much wisdom. And sometimes the work that I do with people, which is taking them into their bodies and uncovering how things feel in the body, and that can give so much clarity and get that energy moving really incredibly quickly. Like it's stunning to me how quickly some pain, some of that energy can be moved through by, I'm using air quotes here, just going into the body. That can be very scary and new and different for people, but it need not be. Like it's really a safe place to be. We're there already anyway. We're already in our bodies. And so we might as well access the incredible wisdom that you help people get to with your, providing the guide rails that you provide so they can get across that bridge.
Yes.
Right.
To get to paradise.
Yeah.
To get to paradise. And then once that phase of power is complete, then R is taking radical responsibility, which is especially for the people pleaser, learning practical things like, how do I freaking set a boundary and hold it? Setting boundaries is so hard for the people pleaser. Saying no is so freaking hard, right? Confrontation, like, let me just stay away from that with a 10-foot pole. Like, oh no, I don't want. But I teach clients how to have conscious communication, how to speak inarguably. When you speak from a place of if I speak from a place of my experience and my experience only, and there's no way that you can argue with that. And so I teach that skill along with boundary setting, along with just creating daily habits so that we can create the life that we desire. And that's the practical part of power.
I love that. And I think it's true. You can't argue with experience. Like they say in 12-step, what is your experience, strength, and hope? It's so powerful.
So powerful. Yeah, I know. And I love to be able to share my experience and my strength and hope. And I, had the hardest time with that before because I always used to feel like especially like with my husband, if we got into some kind of tip or I was triggered, I would just go into like, you know, but you made me feel. That still isn't it still is an attacking thing. It's still going to set someone off and put them in a defensive place. But if I come from, I just wanted to really share with you that, you know, my experience of what happened between us earlier was I really was feeling scared, or I was feeling so vulnerable when you raised your voice. Like I've said that. I've actually said that. Like I said, when you raise your voice at me, it makes me feel like I'm a little girl all over again. It makes me feel like I'm with my mom. And I know that that's my stuff to work on. And I am working on that every single day. And I know that that's not your job to take care of that in me, but I just want you to know what it felt like for me and why I reacted the way I did. Well, how can you argue with that? It changes the dynamic of the conversation and the relationship.
It does. And you show up in a way that is authentic and vulnerable. And that is, again, where we connect. Right. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit there. I had a little bit of a coughing fit off audio there.
That's why I just kept talking. It's a good thing I'm a talker, which is kind of ironic that I'm a talker, because as a people pleaser, and maybe this is why Masks Off is so like great for me now and doing podcasting, is because here's the other thing that a people pleaser suffers with is, and again, I'll speak for myself, feeling so invisible. Feeling like I felt so many times throughout my life that it was not okay for me to speak up or speak out. I could, again, going back to being in a room, I could be at a holiday, a family holiday, and everyone's having their conversation, they're laughing, and I could just fall to the background and just like I wasn't even there, like I was a painting on the wall or something, and not feel worthy enough, or I don't even know what it was, to just even add anything in, like who wants to hear from me kind of thing. It's again, that imposter syndrome. So not speaking up and being really quiet and hiding in the background is the pain, is the prison for the people pleaser. It's like, somebody just see me, just somebody please see me, hear me, and understand me. Not being seen or heard is so incredibly painful for the people pleaser.
And it's interesting. I know when I was a kid, I just didn't want to be seen, right? So I kind of had the opposite. I remember I was fairly shy and I liked to play with like insects, you know, like my friends were the ants and I climbed trees and that sort of thing. And I was too afraid for anyone to see me. I wanted to be invisible, but at the same time, not. At the same time, I wanted to be seen and I wanted to be appreciated and loved for who I was. And yet, you know, I had gotten all these messages, and I know a lot of people didn't mean them in a necessarily bad way, but, you know, I was made fun of because I had ADHD, and it was probably innocent ribbing from my family. My name's Melissa, of course, but my nickname was Missy. And I used to fall up the stairs, not down the stairs, up the stairs, because I had too much energy and was trying to get somewhere so quickly. And, you know, my nickname became Miscellaneous Missy. And I hated that nickname because it made me feel different and it made me feel like, oh, I'm just the freak, right? I can't do anything. I can't even go up the stairs the right way. And so, yeah, it's amazing to me. And I know, I mean, I'm sure there's not one person on this planet, certainly not one who's listening to this podcast, who hasn't felt exactly the way you or I did. And that's our shared humanity, as Kristen Neff talks about, you know, in terms of self-compassion. We have to remember that we have that shared humanity. I think that's one of the reasons why 12-step work can be so empowering for those who are able, you know, who need to and are able to rely on it, is that shared humanity. You know, we're in a group. I'm not alone. I'm here with other people who have felt and who feel exactly the same way that I do. And yeah, and coaching provides that space too, of like, because you're coaching from a place of, I mean, what I hear you coaching from a place of is identification and not I'm book smart. I know all this stuff and I'm just going to teach you how to live your life. No, you have your lived experience, and that is the power of identification and connection, right?
Totally. I mean, I'm like right there with the people in the trenches because I get it. I've been there, I've been there and can still be there. And that's what I claim all the time. And why I do love Brene Brown as well, is because there's never this place of like, there's this pinnacle place where we arrive. And all of a sudden now we are perfect and we never show up with our issues anymore. No, that's not the case. And I love Tara Brach as well, because she says all the time that it is a lifetime. It's a lifetime of healing and unraveling. The difference is that you end up having, so this is the paradise now, right? You can get to a place of more space. There's more spaciousness. There's more identification with our true essence. Like Tara Brach uses that terminology, our true essence, your divinity, your life force, whatever you want to call it, your chi. Once you start to tap into that and connect with that, you do that more and more. It's like your wholeness. And you recognize more quickly when the pattern comes up or another layer of the onion needs to be healed. You're like, oh, I see that. I see it. Or like if the Buddha says, let's have tea, Mara. So now it's like, rather than resisting and pushing away from the things, the pattern that needs to be healed, it's like, oh, okay. Oh, there you are, people pleaser. Oh, there you are, overeater. And this is also I want to go back for a second. This is also part of E in power, embracing the shadow parts, because we do want to cut off, resist, push away the parts of ourselves that we don't like. So I just named them, right? And Tara Brach says often, just naming it makes such a difference. So like, oh, okay, there you are, part of me that can eat a whole sleeve of cookies and not even know that I ate them and, feel like shit. Or, oh, there you are, part of me that gets so anxious and nervous around certain people. Or there you are, and it's like, let's have tea. So now it's like inviting it in. And I actually get excited now to invite that in, because now it's like, oh, it's an opportunity for me to grow. I'm coming from abundance rather than from that, why me? Oh, here it is. Like, why is this always happening to me? Like, that's victimhood. And you're saying, why is this happening? It just is. It is what it is. It's just happening. So now what are you going to do about it? Back to, oh, for owning, right? Like, oh, okay, welcome. It's like, let me grow from this.
Yeah. And I mean, as they say, whatever we resist persists. So, why not invite it to tea? And I love that. And I love how Kristen Neff also talks about this. And she says, if we can learn to have some compassion for that part of ourselves, that whatever it is, that gremlin, that challenge, that Mara, whoever it is, right? And it's because that part of ourselves is trying to do something helpful, right? It's trying to keep us safe. It just doesn't, it just isn't working anymore that way. It once did. That's how we dealt with our little t or big T trauma, or just life in general. But we can have some compassion of like, oh, I see you. You're trying to give me comfort. You're trying to keep me safe. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And now I've got this.
Same thing with those masks. They served us really well. So, coming full circle to masks off, those masks served me well at one point in time. It served you well as well.
And then when they don't serve anymore, there's a wonderful process that we can go through. And I say it's a wonderful process because while it can be sometimes painful, it's also freeing, right? Which is exactly what you're getting at. We have to go through, we can't get around, but going through, not only do we get through the pain and into paradise or something better or different, our experience can benefit other people.
100%. And I wanted to just name two more things, or go back again to the whole 12-step thing. Is, you just said step 12, paying it forward. number one, can help somebody else or experience strength and hope. And then number two is that what is also what we're speaking about, the freedom or all that paradise, it's just recovery. For me, it just feels like it's my recovery. I'm recovering from the trauma that I lived through. I'm recovering from wearing all of those masks. And so in this recovery, I have all these things. I have more spontaneous joy. I have the freedom. I'm able to now like speak up and speak out. I mean, just going on TikTok and doing all of this stuff is stepping outside my comfort zone, which is something that the perfectionist really doesn't like to do. Because again, I don't want that light to be shining on me if I mess up and be imperfect. So let me play small. That's another like prison and pain point, is to play small. But when you're in recovery, you're willing to step outside of your comfort zone, and you're willing to, as Brene Brown and Teddy Roosevelt say, and I use that you already said it in the bio, is to step into the arena and dare greatly. Let's get sweaty. Let's get dusty and covered with dirt, because we're doing the work. The people that are in the stands, the critics that are just judging, they're not in the arena.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love that. Well, as we sort of round this out, and, some of my final questions were around, who is influencing you. And you've already talked about Brene Brown and Gabor Mate and Tara Brach and others. Maybe we should go to something, I don't know, what are you reading or watching right now that is like really getting to you in some way or another, whether it's influencing your work or just you just love it?
The NBA.
Oh, yeah, right. Awesome.
I'm watching the NBA right now, getting ready for the playoffs.
Awesome.
No, let me see. Well, and another one that's on my dream team is Dr. Shafali as well. So I have like this dream team of people that have really helped guide me along the way. So like I have Tara Brach. I'm going to be honest and say, and here's the thing. It is always good and helpful to want to continue to learn, right? We can always benefit from learning. But I'm going to say something right now, because I've really put a pause button on seeking more information, because the reason why is because as a perfectionist and an imposter recovering, I was always seeking for the answer on the outside of me. Oh, if I take this course or I read this book, then I'll find the key to being happy. Then I'll find the answer to how to fix myself. And I'm not saying that all those things weren't helpful along the way, because they absolutely were. Having knowledge is power. I believe that wholeheartedly. But I'm now at a place, and this is more of the paradise. I'm now at a place where my cup is full from within, and I'm in my wholeness, that I'm not seeking anymore. I can't tell you the last time that I have taken a class or read something to like fix myself.
And that's the distinction, right? Like you might read something because you enjoy it. You might watch something because you enjoy it. You're not reading it or watching it or taking the course or whatever in order to fix something, because there is nothing to be fixed.
And that's a really new place for me. And that's how I know that this work, while it was hard and painful, is so worth it, because the change is deep. The transformation is deep and long lasting. It's so deep. Like I can feel myself being healed from the inside out.
I love that. And I'm definitely still working on that piece of, I don't need any more information to fix anything. I don't need another certification or, to follow some other thing, and I'll tell you, social media makes it really challenging, because people are brilliant, and they have these brilliant things that they put out there on Instagram or TikTok, and it's attractive, and you think, yeah, I do. And, the ADHDer in me, I do like to learn new things, and I like bright and shiny objects. And so I think, oh yeah, that'll be great. But I've got to check my motivation, just like you said, like, am I wanting this just because this is interesting to me? Or am I wanting this because I think it's going to make me better or change something that I somehow feel is flawed within me? And if it's the latter, I got to put a pin in that. I got to pause and and kind of work through whatever that's about, right? Because the truth is, we have all the answers already within. It's just a matter of appreciating that and accessing that. So
I could not agree more. And I will just add one little tagline to that is that, yeah, it still is useful to hire certain people to help you in areas where because we don't know everything in every area of everything out there. Like I just told you, I'm looking into hiring someone to help me to grow a podcast. I've never been in a place where I knew how to grow a podcast before. So for me to hire someone who's been down that road makes total sense. And it's the same thing with you or I with coaching. If someone is brand new to somatic work and they decide to work with you, it makes perfect sense because you know about that and they don't have that experience or knowledge. And the same thing with me. If people are wanting to unhook from their patterns and they want to grow, I can help with that because I've been there and maybe they're, just learning about their people pleasing and perfecting patterns. So it's not to say that like coaches or having other people aren't helpful and useful. It's what you said though, is be mindful of your intention and mindful of why you're doing it. If you're doing because you feel you're broken and you have to fix yourself, then you know what I mean? Cut it.
yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's 100% true. There's no reason why we need to do it alone. And, I have 2 or 3 coaches that I work with regularly, for my own, because I just need that, and I need to have that support. And I really, really benefit from their support and their guidance. And they're just, a couple of steps ahead of me on whatever particular aspect of the journey that I'm seeking guidance on. And so absolutely getting that help, which, by the way, if people want to learn more about you and the work that you do, how can they find you?
So I would say the best way is to go to my website, which is kimgrosscoaching.com. And on there, I have a people pleasing and perfectionist quiz, which is really fun. So you can take the quiz, learn a little bit about yourself, and it's fun to do. So kimgrosscoaching.com.
And they can also find your podcast there, a link to your podcast, Masks,
yes.
Right?
My podcast is linked there. The link for my TikTok, for my Instagram. I'm on YouTube, but my podcast is Masks Off with Kim Gross, which is on YouTube. It is on Spotify, Apple, Google, all those platforms. And I'm really looking forward to having you on there soon. So it'll be fun and exciting, and a new podcast released every week.
That's exciting. And I'm looking forward to, people should know that Kim and I will be doing a workshop later on in April. By the time this is published, it might be after April. So I'll let folks know in the show notes how they can access that. But we're going to be doing a workshop on imposterism and perfectionism and masks off. So I'm really looking forward to that and to being on your podcast.
No doubt it'll be great.
Oh, I think it's going to be amazing. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today and sharing your experience, your strength, your hope, your wisdom, your insight, your everything. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad we connected.
Me too. It's been amazing. And it will continue to be. Hey, everybody, if you like this conversation, make sure to rate the show in Apple or Spotify or wherever you are listening so that others can find it and enjoy it too. And if you like the show and want to keep hearing great conversations with really interesting people about how they found their purpose, please donate to the show. Go to thefullymindful.com to donate today. Hey everybody, it's Melissa, and I'm wondering if you all can relate. Have you ever caught yourself procrastinating or maybe doubting your abilities, or maybe you have a black belt inner critic like I do or have had that wants to sabotage your every move with judgment and perfectionism expectations. It might keep you stuck, it might keep you anxious and away from your full potential. The Positive Intelligence Program, PQ, is a powerful 6-week journey designed to help you quiet those saboteurs, embrace positivity, and find flow in your life. Through daily practices and weekly focuses, we'll work together to build your mental fitness. The PQ app will guide you every step of the way and support you, and you'll be supported either by myself in a one-on-one or in a small group of like-minded individuals where you can share insights and progress. So reach out, contact me at info@thefullymindful.com to find out how we can work together one-on-one or in a small group today.